Jake Martinez walked through the doors of the diplomatic lounge with heavy steps. His green military uniform was wrinkled and dirty from 18 hours of patrol duty. Dark circles sat under his brown eyes, and his black hair stuck to his forehead. With sweat, the space station's recycled air felt cool against his tired skin. The lounge was huge, with tall ceilings and windows that showed the stars outside. Different alien species sat at tables throughout the room. Some had blue skin and long necks. Others looked like walking rocks with glowing eyes. The air buzzed with strange languages and electronic translation devices. Jake just wanted to sit down. His feet hurt, his back ached, and his stomach growled with hunger. He had not eaten anything in 8 hours. The patrol had been longer than expected when they found broken equipment in Sector 7. He spotted an empty chair at a table near the center of the room. The table was round and made of some kind of smooth metal that reflected the lights above. 3 other chairs sat around it, but they were all empty. Perfect Jake started walking toward the chair. His boots made soft sounds on the polished floor. He was almost there when something moved in front of him. Something big, a creature stepped into his path. It stood 8 feet tall, much taller than Jake's 6 feet. Its body looked like it was made of clear crystal that caught the light and threw rainbow colors across the walls. The creature had 4 arms, each ending in hands with 3 long fingers. Its head was shaped like a diamond with 2 large eyes. That glowed yellow. Jake stopped walking. He looked up at the creature's face. Those yellow eyes stared down at him with what looked like disgust. "Move aside, human," the creature said. Its voice was deep and sounded like rocks grinding together. The translation device on its chest turned the words into English. "This seating area is not for your kind." Jake blinked slowly. He was too tired for this. "Excuse me?" "You heard me correctly," the alien said. It crossed its 4 arms over its crystal chest. "I am Zixthara of the Veltari warrior caste. We do not share tables with primitive species." Other aliens in the lounge started to notice the conversation. Jake could feel their eyes on him. Some stopped talking to watch. A few moved closer to get a better view. Jake's jaw tightened. He had been called many things in his 5 years as a Marine, but primitive was not one of them. "The chair is empty. I just want to sit down." Zixthara laughed. The sound was like breaking glass. Humans think they deserve the same treatment. As real warriors. How amusing. "I am a real warrior," Jake said. His voice stayed calm, but his hands slowly closed into fists at his sides. "I have served in 3 combat zones." 3? Zixthara's eyes glowed brighter. "I have fought in wars on 17 different worlds. I have been a warrior for 400 of your human years. You are barely old enough to hold a weapon." More aliens gathered around them now. Jake could hear them talking in their strange languages. Some pointed at him. Others made sounds that might have been laughter. A tall alien with blue skin and 6 arms spoke up. "Humans live such short lives. How can they learn anything useful?" Another alien, this one covered in gray fur, nodded its large head. "My species lives for 800 years. Humans are like children to us." Jake felt heat rise in his chest. These aliens talked about humans like they were pets or toys. He wanted to say something back, but his training kicked in. Marine Sergeant. Jake Martinez did not start fights in diplomatic zones, no matter how much he wanted to. "I just want to sit down," he said again. "I have been working for 18 hours. Zixthara stepped closer. Jake could smell something like burned metal coming from the alien's crystal skin. "Working? You call what humans do work? We Veltari train from birth. We perfect our bodies and minds for centuries. When we go to war, we do not make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes, Jake said. Not true warriors, Zixtara replied. Perhaps if humans lived longer, they might learn this. But you die before you can become wise. Jake's right hand twitched. He wanted to show this alien what human warriors could do. But fighting here would cause big problems. It might even start a war between species. He could not let that happen. Fine, Jake said. He took a step back. I will find another chair. Zixtara made a sound like satisfied clicking. Smart choice. Human, perhaps your species is not completely hopeless. Jake turned away from the crystal alien and walked toward the edge of the lounge. He found a small table in the corner with one chair. The table was old and scratched, and the chair had seen better days. But it was empty. He sat down heavily and put his head in his hands. The other aliens went back to their conversations, but he could still hear some of them talking about the incident. Some laughed about the weak human who backed down. Others made jokes about how humans were too scared to fight. Jake closed his eyes and tried to ignore them. He was not scared. He was being smart. But that did not make it feel any better. Behind him, he heard Zixtara sit down in the chair he had wanted. The alien's crystal body made musical sounds as it moved. Jake did not turn around to look. Zixtara was not finished with Jake. The crystal alien's voice carried across the lounge, loud enough for everyone to hear. Look at this human, Zixtara said to the other aliens. See how quickly it gives up. This is why their species will never be great warriors. Jake kept his head down and stared at the scratched table surface. He could feel dozens of alien eyes watching him. His face grew hot with shame and anger. A blue-skinned alien with tentacles for hair spoke up. Tell us more about humans, Zixtara. We have heard stories, but you have fought alongside them. Zixtara stood up from the chair. Its crystal body caught the lights and sent bright reflections dancing around the room. I have seen them in battle. They are weak creatures who panic when things get difficult. Jake's hands clenched into fists under the table. He remembered the Battle of Titan Station, where his unit had held their position for 3 days against impossible odds. Weak was not the word anyone used to describe that fight. Humans live for maybe 80 years if they are lucky. Zixtara continued. We Veltari live for thousands. In my lifetime, I have mastered 17 different fighting styles. I have learned the art of war from the greatest teachers in the galaxy. What can a human learn in such a short time? The gray-furred alien nodded its head. My people live for 800 years. We spend the first 100 years just learning to walk properly. This made several aliens laugh. The sound was like wind chimes mixed with grinding metal. Zixtara walked closer to Jake's table. Humans think they are special because they have spread to many worlds. But they only survive because other species allow it. Without our protection, they would have been destroyed long ago. Jake looked up. We don't need protection. No? Zixtara's yellow eyes glowed brighter. What about the Krexni invasion? 3 months ago? Human colonies were burning across the outer rim. Who came to save them? Jake's stomach twisted. The Krexni had been brutal. They destroyed everything in their path. Many good people had died. The Veltari fleet arrived just in time. The crystal alien continued. We drove off the invaders while human ships ran away. As always, some ships stayed and fought, Jake said quietly. Zixtara laughed that glass-breaking laugh again. Yes, a few stayed. And what happened to them? They were destroyed in minutes. Human weapons are toys compared to real military equipment. More aliens had gathered around now. Jake counted at least 20 different species watching the conversation. Some looked interested. Others seemed bored, like they were watching a show they had seen before. A small alien that looked like a walking tree spoke up. What about human? Technology? They created some useful things. Copies, Zixthara said with a wave of one crystal hand. Everything humans build is based on technology they learned from other species. They have no original ideas. Jake stood up suddenly. His chair scraped against the floor. That's not true. Zixthara turned to face him. Even from across the room, the alien towered over Jake. Oh? Name one thing humans created on their own. Jake opened his mouth, then closed it. He could think of many things, but would these aliens believe him? Or would Zixthara just claim humans had stolen those ideas too? See, Zixthara said. The human cannot answer because there is no answer. Humans are like children playing with toys they do not understand. The blue alien with tentacle hair made a clicking sound. Perhaps that is why they die so young. Their minds are not strong enough to handle real knowledge. Jake felt his face burning. These aliens talked about his species like they were bugs. Or animals. How could they be so cruel? Humans also breed too quickly, added another alien. This one had purple skin and too many eyes. They fill up planets like insects. No thought, no planning. Zixthara nodded. This is true. Quality over quantity is a concept they do not understand. One Veltari warrior is worth 100 humans in battle. Jake's vision started to blur with anger. He wanted to charge across the room and show this crystal alien what one human could do. But his training held him back. Start a fight here, and it would not just be his problem. It would become Earth's problem. The lounge doors opened with a soft hiss. Captain Lisa Harper walked in wearing her dress uniform. She was a small woman with short red hair and green eyes that missed nothing. She looked around the room and quickly spotted Jake standing by his corner table. Jake saw her coming and felt both relief and worry. Captain Harper was tough and smart, but she was also bound by the same diplomatic rules he was. Sergeant Martinez, she said as she reached his table. I was looking for you. Ma'am, Jake replied. Captain Harper's eyes moved around the room, taking in all the watching aliens. She noticed Zixthara standing near the center chair, still glowing with satisfaction. Is there a problem here? She asked. Zixthara answered before Jake could speak. No problem, Captain. I was just explaining to your soldier why humans should show proper respect to their betters. Captain Harper's jaw tightened. Jake could see her fighting to control her temper. I see. Your species has much to learn about military discipline, Zixthara continued. Perhaps if you live longer, you might understand true warrior culture. Jake watched his captain's face turn red. Captain Harper had fought in more battles than most of these aliens had even heard of. She had scars on her arms from plasma burns and a Medal of Honor locked away in her quarters, but she just nodded politely. Thank you for the advice. Zixthara made that clicking satisfied sound again. You are welcome. It is always good when younger species learn from their elders. Captain Harper put her hand on Jake's shoulder. Sergeant, we need to discuss the patrol reports. Jake nodded and followed her toward the door. As they walked, he could hear the aliens behind them still talking and laughing. Some made jokes about humans running away again. Others wondered why such a weak species was even allowed on the station. Just before they reached the door, Jake heard Zixthara's voice one more time. Remember, humans, the galaxy is vast and dangerous. Stay close to those who can protect you. Jake's hands shook as he walked out of the lounge. Not from fear, but from rage he could not release. Jake sat alone in the station's human quarters, staring at the metal walls. Captain Harper had left him alone after they finished talking about the patrol reports. She could see he needed time to cool down after what happened in the lounge. The quarters were small but clean. Jake had a narrow bed, a desk, and a locker for his things. On the desk sat his military datapad, the screen dark and quiet. Pictures of his family were stuck to the wall above his bed. His parents, his little sister Amy, and his younger brother Danny in his new uniform. Jake picked up the picture of Danny. It was taken on the day Danny finished basic training 6 months ago. Danny was smiling wide, his brown eyes bright with excitement. He looked just like Jake, but younger, and without the scars. Danny had always wanted to be a soldier like his big brother. Jake had tried to talk him out of it. The galaxy was a dangerous place, and humans were not always welcome. But Danny would not listen. He said someone had to stand up for Earth and protect the colonies. Jake set the picture down and rubbed his tired eyes. The things Zixthara had said in the lounge kept playing in his head. Maybe the alien was right. Maybe humans were too weak and too short-lived to matter in the galaxy. His datapad made a soft beeping sound. Jake looked at it and saw a red light flashing. That meant he had received a priority message. Those only came when something important had happened. Jake picked up the datapad and entered his security code. The screen came to life and showed an official military message. The header made his stomach drop. Priority alert casualty report. Battle of Kepler Teo, and Jake's hands started shaking as he read the message. Kepler Station was a civilian colony in the Outer Rim. 30,000 people lived there, mostly families who had left Earth to start new lives. The station had farms, schools, and markets. It was supposed to be safe. The message said that 3 days ago, a Krexni invasion fleet had attacked the station without warning. The colony's defenses were weak. They only had a small security force and no military ships nearby. Jake scrolled down and saw a list of names, soldiers who had been killed in the fighting. His heart pounded as he looked for one name in particular. There. It was Corporal Danny Martinez, 1st Colonial Defense Unit. Jake stared at the name on the screen. Danny was dead. His little brother, who had just turned 19 last month, was gone. But there was more to the message. Jake kept reading, his vision blurring with tears. The report said that Danny and his squad had been part of the evacuation security team. When the Krexni attacked, most of the military personnel had been ordered to fall back to defended positions. But Danny's squad had volunteered to stay behind and buy time for the civilian ships to escape. 13 soldiers had held off an entire Krexni assault force for 6 hours. They were outnumbered 200 to 1. The aliens had better weapons, better armor, and better ships. But somehow, Danny and his squad had kept them busy long enough for all 30,000 civilians to get away safely. Jake scrolled down more and found a detailed battle report. Danny's squad had used broken parts and old equipment to set traps for the Krexni. They had turned the station's own systems against the invaders. When their weapons ran out of power, they used tools and pipes, and anything they could find. The report said that Danny had carried wounded civilians to safety, even while under heavy fire. When the evacuation ships were ready to leave, the squad was offered a chance to retreat. They chose to stay and keep fighting instead. All 13 soldiers died in the final assault. But not a single civilian was lost. Jake's hands were shaking. So hard he could barely hold the datapad. There was more. At the bottom of the message was a video file. The label said it was from Danny's helmet camera during the last few minutes of the battle. Jake almost could not bring himself to watch it. But he had to know what happened to his brother. The video started with shaky footage of a burning corridor. Jake could hear explosions and weapons fire in the background. Danny's breathing was heavy and fast. "This is Corporal Martinez," Danny's voice said through the speaker. "If anyone finds this recording, I want them to know that we held the line. Every single civilian got out safe." The camera turned to show other soldiers fighting nearby. They were all young, probably around Danny's. Age. Their faces were covered in dirt and blood, but they kept fighting. "Tell my family I'm sorry I couldn't come home," Danny continued. But this was the right thing to do. These people needed help, and we were the only ones here to give it. An explosion shook the camera. When it stopped moving, Jake could see. But Danny was hurt. Blood ran down his face, and his left arm hung loose at his side. But Danny was still smiling. "Hey, Jake," he said, looking directly into the camera. "I know you'll probably see this. Don't be sad, okay? I kept my promise. Remember when we were kids, and I said I would always protect people who couldn't protect themselves? Well, I did it. 30,000 people are alive because we were here." Another explosion, closer this time. Danny's smile faded as he looked at something off camera. "They're coming through the main corridor now," he said. "This is probably it for us. But we bought them enough time." The last transport just jumped to hyperspace. Danny looked back at the camera one more time. "Tell Mom and Dad I love them. Tell Amy to study hard and stay safe. And Jake ... don't let what happened here make you give up. The galaxy needs people who will fight for others, not just for themselves." The video ended in static. Jake set the datapad down and put his head in his hands. Danny was gone. His little brother, who used to follow him around asking questions about everything, was dead. But he had died saving 30,000 innocent people. Jake thought about what Zixthara had said in the lounge, that humans were weak and cowardly, that they ran away when things got difficult, that they could not be real warriors because they lived such short lives. Danny had lived for 19 years. In that short time, he had learned enough about being a warrior to stand against impossible odds and win. Not for glory or conquest, but to save people he had never met. Jake wiped his eyes and picked up the datapad again. He read the battle report one more time, memorizing every detail. Then he stood up and walked toward the door. It was time to go back to the lounge. Zixthara needed to see this message. All of them did. Jake walked back into the diplomatic lounge with steady steps. His eyes were red from crying, but his back was straight and his jaw was set. The datapad felt heavy in his hands. The lounge looked the same as before. Aliens sat at tables talking, in their strange languages. The lights still threw patterns on the walls, and the windows still showed the stars outside. But everything felt different to Jake now. Zixthara was still sitting at the center table, the same chair Jake had wanted earlier. The crystal alien was talking to a group of other aliens, probably telling more stories about how weak humans were. Jake walked past several tables without looking at anyone. He could feel their eyes on him, but he did not care. He had something more important to do. He found an empty table near the middle of the room and sat down. Then he placed his datapad on the table and stared at it for a moment. Danny's last message was stored inside that small device. His brother's final words and final moments. Jake took a deep breath and looked up. Zixthara was still talking, but some of the other aliens had noticed Jake's return. They whispered to each other and pointed in his direction. The human came back, one of them said loud enough for Jake to hear. "I thought it had learned its lesson." Zixthara turned to look at Jake. The crystal alien's yellow eyes glowed with amusement. Perhaps it wants to apologize for its earlier behavior. Jake did not respond. He just sat there looking at his datapad, his face calm, but his hands shaking slightly. Zixthara stood up and walked over to Jake's table. The alien's crystal body made musical sounds as it moved. Other aliens followed, forming a circle around. "Jake's table. You look upset, human," Zixthara said. "Did you receive bad news from your short-lived family?" Jake looked up at the alien. Tears were running down his face, but his voice was steady. "Yes." The aliens around the table made sounds. That might have been laughter. They seemed to enjoy seeing Jake in pain. "Let me guess," Zixthara continued. "Someone you cared about died of old age?" "That happens often with your species." "No," Jake said quietly. "He died in battle." Zixthara's eyes grew brighter. "A battle? How interesting. Let me guess what happened. Your warrior friend panicked and ran away, then got shot in the back by the enemy." More laughter from the watching aliens. Jake felt anger rising in his chest, but he kept it under control. "Actually," Jake said, standing up slowly, "he saved 30,000 innocent people and died fighting to protect them." The laughter stopped. Zixthara tilted its diamond-shaped head. 30,000? That seems like a large number for one human to save. Jake picked up his datapad and walked over to the lounge's main display screen. It was a huge screen that covered most of one wall. All the aliens in the room could see it clearly. "Would you like to see what really happened?" Jake asked. Zixthara crossed its forearms. "Show us your human propaganda. It will be amusing." Jake connected his datapad to the display screen. The military report appeared on the big screen, showing official seals and security codes. This was not propaganda. This was real. The aliens in the room grew quiet as they read the report. Some moved closer to get a better look. The report was written in standard galactic language, so everyone could understand it. "The Battle of Kepler Station," Jake said, his voice carrying across the silent room. 3 days ago. A civilian colony with 30,000 people. Families, children, old people. They had no military defenses. The screen showed a map of the station and the attacking Krexny fleet. The numbers were clear. 200 enemy ships against 13 human soldiers. "My brother Danny was 19 years old," Jake continued. "He had been a soldier for 8 months. When the Krexny attacked, he and his squad could have evacuated with everyone else. Instead, they stayed behind to buy time for the civilian. Ships to escape." Jake pressed a button on his datapad. The screen changed to show battle footage from security cameras around the station. The aliens in the lounge watched because they saw Danny's squad setting up defensive positions in the burning corridors. The footage showed young human soldiers using broken equipment and spare parts to build weapons and traps. They worked together, with speed and skill, turning the station's own systems against the invaders. 13 soldiers held off 200 Krexny warriors for 6 hours, Jake said. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and fighting with makeshift weapons. But they did not give up. The screen showed Danny carrying wounded civilians to safety while enemy fire exploded around him. His face was determined, not afraid. He moved, with purpose, making sure everyone got to the escape ships. Zixthara's crystal features had changed. The alien's eyes were not glowing as brightly now. It was staring at the screen with something that looked like confusion. "This cannot be accurate," Zixthara said. "No soldier would choose certain death over retreat. It makes no strategic sense." Jake pressed another button. The screen changed to show Danny's helmet camera footage. The final moments of the battle. The lounge fell completely silent as they watched Danny's last stand. They saw him bleeding and surrounded, but still fighting. They heard his voice, calm and steady, explaining that all the civilians had escaped safely. When Danny looked into the camera and smiled, saying he had kept his promise to protect people who could not protect themselves, several aliens in the room made sounds of surprise. "He is smiling," whispered the blue alien with tentacle hair. "He knows he is about to die, but he is smiling." The gray-furred alien shook its large head. "I do not understand. What did he gain from this sacrifice? There is no glory in death." Jake turned to face the room. He gained the knowledge that 30,000 innocent people were safe, that families would go home to their children, that children would grow up to have families of their own. The video ended in static. The lounge stayed silent for a long moment. Zixthara was staring at the blank screen. Your brother fought not for conquest or territory. He fought for strangers, for people he did not even know. Yes, Jake said. He chose to die so that others could live. Yes. Zixthara's crystal body had stopped making music. The alien seemed frozen in place, processing what it had seen. I have fought in wars across 17 worlds, Zixthara said slowly. I have conquered enemies and claimed territories for my people. I have brought glory to the Veltari name. But I have never fought for people I did not know. I have never chosen death to save strangers. Jake wiped the tears from his face. Danny was not unique. There are millions of humans who would have done the same thing. We do not fight for glory or conquest. We fight to protect others, especially those who cannot protect themselves. The purple alien with too many eyes spoke up. But why? What is the purpose of saving people who cannot help you in return? Jake looked at the alien. Because it is the right thing to do. Because every life has value. Because if we do not protect the innocent, who will? Zixthara slowly turned to face Jake. For the first time since Jake had met the alien, Zixthara's eyes were dim and thoughtful. I called your species primitive, the alien said quietly. But perhaps I was wrong. The diplomatic lounge remained quiet after the video ended. Jake stood by the display screen, still holding his datapad. The image of his brother's final moments was burned into everyone's minds. Zixthara had not moved from its spot near Jake's table. The crystal alien's forearms hung loose at its sides, and its yellow eyes were dim. For someone who had lived for 400 years, Zixthara looked confused and lost. I do not understand, the alien said finally. Your brother gained nothing from his sacrifice. No territory, no resources, no advantage for his people. He simply died. Jake turned away from the screen to face Zixthara. He gained something more important than territory or resources. He gained the knowledge that he had done the right thing. The right thing, Zixthara repeated slowly, as if the words were foreign. I have spent centuries learning the art of war. I have studied strategy and tactics from the greatest minds in the galaxy, but no one ever taught me about the right thing. A blue alien with tentacle hair spoke up. In my culture, we fight to expand our borders and increase our power. Victory brings honor and resources. Same with my people, added the gray-furred alien. We conquer because conquest proves we are strong. Jake shook his head. Danny was not trying to prove anything. The civilians at Kepler Station needed help, and he was there to give it. It was that simple. Zixthara walked closer to Jake. The alien moved slowly, as if it was thinking hard about something. Tell me about your brother. What kind of training did he have? What weapons did he master? He learned basic combat skills and training, Jake said. But mostly he was just a regular person. He liked to read books and play games. He wrote letters to his girlfriend back on Earth every week. He wanted to be a teacher someday. A teacher? Zixthara's eyes flickered. Not a warrior? He never wanted to be a career soldier. He joined up because he thought it was his duty to help protect Earth's colonies. He said someone had to stand between dangerous things and innocent people. Jake pulled out his wallet and took out a small photo. It showed Danny at a family gathering, laughing with their little sister Amy. He was wearing civilian clothes and looked like any normal young man. This is who he really was, Jake said, showing the photo to Zixthara. Not a super soldier or a military genius, just a kid who cared about other people. Zixthara stared at the photo for a long time. He looked so young and happy. He was both of those things. Right up until the end. The crystal alien was quiet for several minutes. Other aliens in the lounge had started talking again, but In whispers. They kept looking over at Jake and Zixthara. Finally, Zixthara spoke again. I have lived for 400 years. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have fought in wars that decided the fate of entire star systems. But in all that time, I have never seen courage like your brother showed. Jake felt fresh tears in his eyes. Thank you. No, Zixthara said firmly. Thank you. You have shown me something I did not know existed. Your brother fought not because he hated his enemies, but because he loved the people he was protecting. That is not primitive. That is something we have forgotten how to do. The alien looked around the lounge at all the other species watching them. We fight for territory and resources and glory. We measure victory by what we take from our enemies. But your brother measured victory by what he gave to innocence. Jake nodded. That is how humans think about war. We do not fight because we want to. We fight because sometimes it is the only way to protect people who cannot protect themselves. Zixthara turned and walked back toward the center table. The table where this whole confrontation had started. The chair that Jake had wanted to sit in was still empty. The crystal alien stopped next to the chair and looked back at Jake. Sergeant Martinez, would you do me the honor of sharing this table with me? Jake blinked in surprise. What? I said you are not worthy to sit with warriors. I was wrong. You and your brother are the kind of warriors the galaxy needs more of. Zixthara gestured to the empty chair. Please, sit with me. Jake walked slowly across the room. Every alien in the lounge was watching him now. He reached the table and looked at the chair. A few hours ago, he had just wanted a place to rest his tired feet. Now it felt like something much more important. He sat down. Zixthara sat across from him. Tell me more about your brother, the alien said. What was he like when he was young? Jake smiled for the first time since reading the message. He was curious about everything, always asking questions. He wanted to know how things worked and why people did the things they did. He sounds like he would have made a good teacher. He would have been the best teacher. He cared about people learning and growing. Other aliens had started approaching their table, not to mock or insult, but to listen. The purple alien with many eyes sat down at a nearby table. The blue alien with tentacles pulled up a chair. Your species fascinates me, said a new voice. Jake looked up to see an alien he had not noticed before. It looked like a walking tree with silver bark and glowing leaves. We have heard stories about human courage, but we thought they were exaggerated. They are not exaggerated, Jake said. There are millions of humans serving throughout the galaxy right now. Most of them are just regular people doing their jobs. But when innocent lives are in danger, they step up. The tree-like aliens sat down at their table. Why do they do this? What drives humans to risk everything for strangers? Jake thought about the question. It was hard to explain something that seemed so natural to him. I think it is because we know how fragile life is, he said finally. Humans do live short lives compared to most of you. We know that every day is precious because we do not have very many of them. So when we see someone's life in danger, we understand what they are about to lose. Zixthara leaned forward. You fight harder because you live shorter lives? Maybe. We also know what it feels like to be small and vulnerable in a big, dangerous universe. So when we see others in that same position, we want to help them. More aliens gathered around their table. Jake found himself telling stories about human courage and sacrifice. He talked about firefighters who ran into burning buildings to save people they had never met. He told them about doctors who worked in war zones to help wounded civilians. He described teachers who stayed in dangerous areas to educate children. All of these people could have chosen safer lives, Jake explained, but they chose to help others instead. That is what humans do. The gray-furred alien shook its head in wonder. My people would call such behavior foolish. Why risk your own life for strangers? Because those strangers have families who love them, Jake said. They have dreams and hopes and things they want to do with their lives. Who are we to decide that our lives are more important than theirs? Zixthara was quiet for a long moment. Then the crystal alien stood up and faced the room. I have something to say, Zixthara announced. Its voice carried to every corner of the lounge. Today I learned that I was wrong about humans. I called them primitive and weak. I said they were not true warriors. The alien paused and looked down at Jake. But after seeing what Sergeant Martinez's brother did at Kepler Station, I understand that humans are not weak. They are the strongest warriors in the galaxy, not because of their weapons or their ships, but because of their hearts. Several aliens made sounds of agreement. Others looked confused, but they were listening. We fight for conquest and glory. Zixthara continued. Humans fight for love. Love of their families. Love of innocent people. Love of life itself. That makes them more powerful than any weapon. Jake felt his throat tighten with emotion. He had come here angry and humiliated. Now he felt proud. Proud of Danny, proud of his species, and proud to be human. The tree-like alien spoke up. What happened at Kepler Station should be remembered. That young human sacrifice saved 30,000 lives. That is a victory worth celebrating. Yes, agreed the blue alien. We should tell this story to others. Let the galaxy know what real courage looks like. Jake stood up and looked around. The room. Danny would not want to be remembered as a hero. He would want to be remembered as someone who did his job. His job was to protect innocent people, and he did it. Then we will remember him that way, Zixthara said. And we will remember that humans do not fight because they are strong. They are strong because they fight for the right reasons. The alien reached out with one crystal hand. Jake shook it, feeling the smooth, cool surface against his skin. I would be honored to fight alongside humans, Zixthara said. Perhaps you could teach us something about courage. Jake smiled. And maybe you could teach us something about living longer so we can protect more people. This brought laughter from around the table. Not mocking laughter, but warm, friendly sounds. As the evening went on, more aliens came to their table to hear Jake's stories. They asked questions about human culture and values. They wanted to understand how a species that lived such short lives could be so brave. Jake told them about Danny's girlfriend, who was studying to be a doctor so she could help sick people. He talked about their sister Amy, who wanted to be an engineer and build safer ships for colonists. He described their parents, who had taught their children that helping others was the most important thing in life. Your brother died as he lived, Zixthara said as the evening wound down.